winning the division, hosting a playoff game, finally getting into the playoffs. So let's break it down a little bit here. Tell me how far you had this team going as you went through your season predictions, where you think that their final game is going to be. And then we'll talk about some offensive and defensive MVPs. We'll talk about breakout players. We'll talk about rookies. But tell me how far you think this team is going to go. And then let's just start with offensive MVPs. I think that's a good way to do it.
So I have their road ending in the divisional round. Look, and I could see them getting further with that depending on if their pass protection is substantially improved. And obviously if Aaron Rodgers, what version of Aaron Rodgers do we get? This is kind of the question, right? Is he an old quarterback coming off the Achilles injury? Is he like he was maybe 2 years ago in his last year in Green Bay? Is he around the 10th or 11th best quarterback in football, which would be a huge improvement still for the Jets considering where they've been for all these years? Or is there any chance he could get back to an MVP caliber quarterback even at 40 years old? I kind of took the middle ground there. I have them losing in the divisional round, in part because when my bracket came together, they got a matchup that I really didn't like for them, or really you don't like for anybody. I'm sure that obviously implies what it was, but I see them as a really good team who can win at least one playoff game. And if their pass protection holds up and if Aaron Rodgers holds up, they could get further than that, especially with a defense that should travel well. But I have them losing in the divisional round. And look, I know all the spotlight is in the passing game, but this team wants to be balanced, right? And you have a guy at running back in Breece Hall who was second among all running backs in scrimmage yards last year behind Christian McCaffrey, and this was behind the second worst offensive line in the league. Breece Hall's an absolute animal. He's going to run the ball a lot better when he's a home run hitter, even at his size. Long runs, powerful runs, short yardage. This is one of the true workhorse backs we have in the league. And the substantial improvement in run blocking for this team as well. You talk about guys like Morgan Moses. If Elijah Vera Tucker, too, if he plays a whole season for the first time since his rookie year, you've got an elite run blocker at guard who's finally going to stay at one position. Breece Hall is primed to have a huge year, and Aaron Rodgers is fully aware that he needs balance in his offense. I think Hall's going to get somewhere between 20-25 touches a game and be really, really efficient with them.
I mean, Breece Hall I'm with you. He does not get enough credit for being one of those workhorse backs, right? If I said to you, like, hey, name me the true workhorse backs in the NFL, I think a lot of people would say, a Derrick Henry, a Jonathan Taylor. Then they'd probably even reach for like Bijan Robinson's name. I don't think that Breece Hall gets the credit that he deserves for everything that he can do. He's a fantastic rusher. You see the overall grades there, but the receiving grade is the one that I want to point out as well, because when you talk about being a workhorse back, somebody that's on the field for all three downs, we have a stat at PFF called threat. It's essentially like wide receiver usage is kind of the layman's term for how I describe it here. It's how often are you targeted per route that you run. So how much of a focal point are you in the offense when you were on the field? Breece Hall had the highest threat percentage on the team last year at 26.6%. Now, obviously, he's not running as many routes as wide receivers do, so that sort of like goes into it. But when he was running routes, they're targeting this guy as well as wanting to target him in the running game as well. So I agree with you. I think that Breece Hall is a really great choice for offensive MVP for this team. I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson. I think that we are about to see a phenomenal season from Garrett Wilson. I think he is going to emerge as a player who is certainly in the conversation for one of the top 8, top 5, maybe even receivers that we have in this league. If Aaron Rodgers is fully healthy this year, man, I think that Garrett Wilson's going to eat. And I think that we're going to see the best version of him. You mentioned sort of, hey, everyone's thinking the Jets are going to kind of run through that passing attack. I agree with you, but it's not like it's just, oh yeah, there's a plethora of options to throw to. Like, it's not like Aaron Rodgers is throwing to like the Bears offensive weapons, or something like that. It's kind of Garrett Wilson, and then we got to figure it out after that. But at the very top, it's got to be Garrett Wilson. Good thing is, Aaron Rodgers got a lot of practice with that from his days with Devontae Adams when he was force-feeding them the football during those last couple of years that they were in Green Bay together playing some really good ball. So I got Garrett Wilson for that one. What about defensive MVP? Who do you got defensive MVP for this team?
There's some really good choices on this team. Obviously, you've got Quinnen Williams up front. The players voting the top 100 apparently would say Quincy Williams, his brother, at linebacker. But I think for me, the obvious is the obvious. It has to be Sauce Gardner. And look, Trevor, I love having debates. I love having arguments about football. I can do it 24/7. One of the very few things I don't debate is that Sauce Gardner is the best corner in football. Just lights out. I know he doesn't lead the league in interceptions. 12 forced incompletions last year is a really good number, but this is as lights out a corner, honestly, I could argue, as I've seen since former Jet Darrelle Revis, Jets Hall of Famer Darrelle Revis.
Well, former Buccaneer, great.
Former Buccaneer,
Darrelle
great
Revis,
too, of course. Yeah, I mean, Sauce is just as good a cover corner as I don't think even as there is in the league right now as we've seen in a while. I mean, I believe through his first 2 years, the only player in PFF history with a higher coverage grade in the first 2 seasons was Richard Sherman. He's on this level, and cornerback play is so volatile. But you know what you're getting out of Sauce, and leading maybe the best cornerback room in the league. He is just, even if he doesn't get 6, 7, 8 interceptions this season, he's lights out. He's one of the few guys you can see going toe-to-toe, press man with any of the top receivers in the league. And Robert Saleh even uncharacteristically started using more man coverage late in the year last year because he's got Sauce, because he's got DJ Reed, because he's got Michael Carter. Sauce is the best corner in football. He's arguably the best player on this entire team. I believe he's their defensive MVP. If something happened to him, I think it would make a big difference in coverage for them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think that he is their defensive MVP, and he is going to have an opportunity to earn that. Maybe not even just defensive MVP. Maybe, like you said, overall MVP on the team. Because when you look at the schedule that the Jets have, obviously, anytime the Jets are going to be able to be good, we've seen it with their primetime game selections over the last 2 years. People are interested and they're going to want to watch. Look at the matchups that Sauce Gardner has going into this year. Week 1, it starts out with it's either Deebo Samuel or maybe even Brandon Ayuk if Brandon Ayuk is still there, right? That's a really great 1-2 combo. Those are tough receivers to be able to guard. So the combination of Deebo and Ayuk, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins when they face up with the Houston Texans, Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill twice a year, and then Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua a little bit later in the year as well. This is a gauntlet that Sauce Gardner is going to have to go up against. And if he is the best corner in football, which I agree with you, I believe he is, man, a successful year this year will straight up erase all doubt that there is any corner that is at the top with him. And I think that he will have that chance to really prove that. What about a breakout player here for the New York Jets? Who are you going with that as a breakout guy for 2024?
So, all we heard all offseason, and we still hear it to this day, is, why did they let go of Bryce Huff? And now why did they trade for Hassan Reddick? And this and that and the other thing. And where's their pass rush depth coming from? Let's get the second-year player Will McDonald out of Iowa State going. Look, he didn't play a whole lot last year. You could easily argue he should have played more. He's clearly a very talented pass rusher. I think has one of the best spin moves in the entire league, Trevor. I mean, you just look at this guy. It's this weird combination of finesse and violence as opposed to just the usual finesse spin move. He just throws himself into tackles and gets around them when he's rushing the passer. Had an excellent preseason. I got to think he's sick and tired of hearing all about Bryce Huff and Hassan Reddick and all of these guys the Jets are trying to put in front of him. Why not just give Will McDonald a chance on those passing situations, right? And you have some combination, right, of Quinnen Williams and Jermaine Johnson and Michael Clemens, and now you throw Will McDonald in there. He's a young player with a lot of pass rush talent. I get that he's a little bit thin, that you can't play him every down yet, can't play him in run defense all the time, but you have other guys for that. Let this guy pin his ears back and rush the passer, especially late in games.
Yeah, look, I think that that's a really good call out because I agree with you. I think that he is the guy that's got to step up, and I think that we've got some PFF numbers to really echo the point that you are making here. You're right, did not play a ton of snaps last year. I think it was 183 snaps overall that he played last season. I think that just speaks to how deep the Jets' defensive line was. He's in for a much bigger workload this season, but even in just those 183 snaps, 99 of them were pass rush snaps, okay? And he still earned a 15.2 pass rush win percentage. Now, that's pretty solid, especially for a rookie and especially for a guy who, I know you're a college guy. You remember the Iowa State tape. They were playing him as like a 4-eye defensive end. And it's like, what are you doing? This guy's very clearly a stand-up outside linebacker, pass rusher type of player. So he was playing at a high level while still playing. Yeah, out of position is a weird way to put it, but I guess that we would because that's more of a stand-up edge that we would want him to be, and it was more of a true hand-in-the-dirt defensive end that Iowa State was asking him to play, at least that final year of his season. So he's in a much better situation just alignment-wise with what the Jets are asking him to do because we've seen it over the last couple of years. They are allowing him to stand up and be that 2-point, more like wide 7, wide 9 type of edge rusher. That 15.2 pass rush win percentage, like I said last year, was a really good number, albeit a small sample size. this preseason, again, it's a small sample size, right? They're not playing Will McDonald a ton. He only had 14 pass rush snaps to his name. 28.2 pass rush win percentage and an elite pass rush grade. So I agree with you, man. I think that all of the talk is, oh man, Brees Hall's not there anymore. You said all the drama surrounding Hassan Reddick. I wonder if the Jets are as firm in their stance as they are, because they say, all right, Hassan, you want to play for us? Fine. We'll make Will McDonald the guy. And we got faith that Will McDonald's going to be the guy. So I also think that he is going to be a big-time breakout candidate, and I think the Jets have been giving us little hints that they also believe that he's going to be their breakout candidate. Last category we got here for the Jets before we move on to the next team, best rookie. Who do you think the best rookie is going to be?
This was a tough one because you've got a team that, if all goes according to plan, their rookies aren't going to be playing very much, right? You talk about their first-round pick, Olu Fashanu. That's really like he's the swing tackle this year. If Tyron Smith or Morgan Moses get hurt, you saw him play both sides in the preseason. Obviously looked more comfortable at left tackle than right tackle. He played his second preseason game at right tackle, especially in the run game, didn't look quite as comfortable, but they feel good enough about his talent, pass protection, but he's not going to start. I'm going with the receiver, their third-round receiver, first pick of the third round, Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. Look, we've got Garrett Wilson. You've got Mike Williams when he's healthy, playing the X for sure, but the depth behind those two is questionable. Xavier Gibson had a nice year last year, especially as a returner, but he's not a proven route runner. Alan Lazard really struggled last year, and he's more of an outside threat. You know, maybe with Aaron Rodgers back, they could work that Green Bay magic back into it, but I think Corley's got a shot, especially if he can compete with Gibson during the season, just to get some of that screen work, some of the after-the-catch work that he was really famous for at Western Kentucky, right? Look, he's not a polished route runner. It's not a huge route tree, but it just feels like Corley is one of those guys when Aaron Rodgers has all those check-with-me calls and he has those screen calls that are built in and kind of the pocket quarterback RPO stuff that goes with all. It feels like Corley can make people miss, right? And then you've got two really elite guys at receiver who can make people miss after the catch, and Garrett Wilson, Wilson does not get enough credit for how much he does after the catch as well. But if you have Wilson and Corley as guys you can just dump the ball to right at the line of scrimmage and they can make things happen 7, 8, 10 yards down the field after the catch, you've got two really good weapons with the ball in their hands. I know Corley's not off to the best start. He's behind Gibson as far as returning goes, kick returning, probably behind him right now to start out as the slot, but I still think he's going to get work this season and in a class that's not going to play a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, we briefly touched on it when we started our conversation about the Jets. They'll need him to, right? I mean, it's Garrett Wilson and then figure it out. Like it's a gladiators pool of who's going to come out and be that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and they're going to need multiple guys to be able to step up in those spots. So I think that Malachi Corley, even if he's not in one of those spots to start this year, could certainly be a major piece for them. Maybe if he's hitting his groove sometime in December, making it into the playoffs. I mean, that's what they would want the most anyways, as long as they're going to be in position for that. I'll go Braylon Allen, the running back from Wisconsin. Yeah, I was a little bit lower on Braylon Allen than I think a lot of other draft analysts out there were, and that's because when I watched him specifically in 2023, I just didn't love how he felt in space. He didn't have a great feel for the finesse game, if you will, right? And when you think about playing running back, and when you think about, RB vision and breaking tackles and elusiveness, it's all towards the same goal, to get into space. You want to be able to get out from the trenches, get beyond the blockers, get beyond the second level, and get into space. So if you get into space and then you don't look comfortable in space, you don't know how to take advantage of that space, that's not great. We need you to be better in that, because that's the entire goal of being a great running back. And so I felt as though that was sort of an area and a feel for his game that was lacking in 2023. I felt much more comfortable watching him in those situations throughout the preseason, albeit, of course, like we said, a small sample size, but that power profile of his game, getting behind his shoulder pads, cracking these dudes just straight into the chest, lower in the shoulder. I mean, like, that's vintage Braylon Allen stuff, but he was also showing you a little bit of wiggle, getting that fancy footwork going, being able to find that open space. And I was encouraged by what I saw in the preseason. So I think that for as much as they want to ride Brees Hall and let him be that workhorse back, you can't give him, I don't think they're going to give him the Le'Veon Bell or the Larry Johnson treatment where he's getting like 450 touches this season. They're going to have to work somebody else in there. I think Braylon Allen could be that guy.